How's it going, everyone? This is Optimus N64 again. Now, in this video today, I'm going to talk about some issues going on in the video game community, well, the industry. More about Sony's censorship policies, why they're out of touch, and what they can do to improve, and maybe some other things as well. Now, I might have mentioned this in previous videos before, but I've been trying to make this video for quite a while, and because I just wanted to voice my opinion on why I disagree with some of the issues that's been going on as of late, especially in PlayStation studios. See, lately, Sony, if not PlayStation Studios, has been on a censorship rampage. Recently, they ended up censoring a game called Martha is Dead. Let me look it up here real quick. Martha is Dead. This is a psychological horror game developed by a company called LKA and published by Wired Productions. It was launched February 24th, 2022 for Microsoft Windows, PC. It's on PlayStation 4, 5, Xbox One, and the new Xbox Series consoles. Now, from what I've heard, I haven't seen this in the game yet. I don't think I probably will. But there's a scene in the game where, according to reviewtechusa, and I saw the video. Well, I didn't see the scene of the game from reviewtechusa. I just saw a video from reviewtech about Sony censorship policies and why it needs to stop. According to him, there was a mini game where you cut off a face of another character because it was, I don't know if it was essential to the story or not. I don't know much. All I know is that Sony censored it on their platform, and as of late, it's not censored on PC nor the Xbox consoles. Now, recently, as we all know, Sony has had a bit of a censorship policies. They've been trying to improve them or increase them these past few years. I think a lot of it had to do when PlayStation Studios. Now, Sony is still a Japanese brand, but their PlayStation Studios, from what I heard, moved to, I think, San Diego, California, or they're definitely in California now. They moved their studios back into to California back in 2016, and starting around 2018, they started developing more censorship policies. At start, it seemed like there was a lot of Japanese video games, a lot of anime-based games or niche titles, and a lot of people just weren't happy. At first, it seemed like they were only going to censor Japanese games, but then we have some other Western games too, like Martha is Dead. I'm not sure what country of origin LKA is from, the makers of this game, but nevertheless, it's still being censored because, a lot of PlayStation fans, such as myself, we've been trying to warn gamers that their censorship policies are just going to get worse because now they're going to start censoring violent content. From what I heard at first, there were rumors that Code Vein, like the PlayStation version, was going to get censored, and because of that, I currently have an Xbox One copy. It's currently sealed. I haven't opened it up yet because I want to wait and get either an Xbox Series X, or I'll just save up the money and buy an Xbox One X. Might have to get it used. I don't know. But we'll just have to wait and see. Now, again, that was just a rumor. I still don't know 100% for sure if the game was censored or not. But with the recent game Martha is Dead being censored, it's clear to us now that Sony's going to start censoring some violent content in Western games. I got to give a shout out to YouTube users like Censored Gaming. They have this video called Sony Check, where Japanese game devs disapprove of Sony censorship. I'll have a link to that video in the description below. There's been other YouTube users that had The Last of Us Part 2, where it had a full-on sexual intercourse scene, which is a double standard of Sony's, and I'll explain that later in the video. I also want to give a shout out to users like blacksaged Gamer, Omega Katana. I think I said your name right, and if I didn't, correct me if I'm wrong. Back when I had Twitter, I used to follow groups like Voice of Fan Service and other users that spoke out against the Sony censorship policies and other gamers. What I have here is a list of games that have been censored by Sony for now. Okana for Rhythm Across the Blue, censored. Ark of the Alchemist, censored. Blade Arcus Rebellion from Shining. Box art censored. We got Blue Reflection censored. Brave Neptunia, Catherine Full Body, all of which are censored. Conception Plus, a game that had touching, censored, and classmating, censored. Data Live Rio Reincarnation, censored. Art Book is also censored. Dead or Alive Extreme 3 Scarlet has been censored. Only the PlayStation version. I have the Switch version. It's not censored. Death in Request 2 censored. Devil May Cry 5 was censored. Now, to be fair, at least from what I heard, that was Capcom's call to censor the game. But it was only the PlayStation 5 version that they censored. Or not the PlayStation 5. This was a game from 2019, so it was on PlayStation 4 at the time. You can get the special edition through Xbox Series X, S, and PlayStation 5. But for a brief moment, the PlayStation 4 version was censored. There was characters like Trish and Lady. Their rear ends were censored through camera lens. But Sony did inform Capcom that no, that wasn't censorship worthy. You didn't have to censor that. So they fixed it later in a patch. Then there's games like Doki Doki Literature Club Plus, which I'm not really a fan of, but I know there's people that do enjoy it. It was censored on PlayStation. There's games like Dragon Star, Vernier censored, Fairy Tail, which I'm not a Fairy Tail fan, but it had some censored content in it. Final Fantasy VIII Remastered censored on all versions of the game because of Square Enix's so-called ethics department or whatever it was. You got Game, Tengoku Cruisin' Mix censored, Haruto Alicegram censored, Labyrinth Life censored, Love R, DLC costumes were censored, Mary Skelter 2 censored, Melian Arthur Arcana Blood censored, Nekopara Volume 1 censored, Nora Ineko Heart censored, Omega Labyrinth Z, Abandoned Unit. It says right here the PlayStation version was banned in the United States. In Europe, I don't know if it's not banned at all. I'll have to do more research on that game. PlayStation Static and Dynamic Themes censored. Raspberry Cube censored. Saku Saku Love Blooms with the Cherry Blossom censored. Silverio Trinity censored. Sengoku Hime 7. Sin-un. I'm not even going to try pronouncing the full name. But there is an article about the list of censored games. I'll have it posted in the description below. This game was censored. There's been Senran Kagura 7 censored, Senran Kagura Burst Renewal censored, SNK 40th Anniversary Collection box art censored, Super Seducer banned, Terminator Resistance sex scene censored, Williams Pinball Volume 2 censored, censored in the West, Yuragaki so no Yuna-san censored, Zenkai Zero Last Beginning also censored, So Now, keep in mind, I'm not 100% a fan of all of these games. There's some I have an interest in. I do plan to get Blade Arcus Rebellion from Shining because I like fighting games. The Senran Kagura games I've been interested in for a while. I know there was like Final Fantasy VIII Remastered, which I wanted to support Final Fantasy VIII. I mean, I like all the main series Final Fantasy games minus 11 and 14. Not saying they're bad games, I just don't play them because they're online only, and I just prefer to have the offline single player experience. Um, let's let's do some history real quick. Let's go back on the history of gaming and video games in general. Back in older times, there was a time where we saw video games as a child's form of entertainment. And I've listened to a lot of adult gamers who are older than me. Keep in mind, I was born in 1993. My first console was the Nintendo 64. We were kind of still in a time where gaming was seen for kids, but the 90s was the era when the ratings started to increase, where we started getting more adult games, and I'll get into that later. But back in 1977, there came the Atari 2600. And, Atari used to have a rivalry with ColecoVision, I think it was. And then in 1983, when all these low-quality games started being made, that was when the video game industry suffered a market crash. Now, keep in mind, the video game market crash of 1983, that was only in North America. Gaming, arcades, and console gaming, they were still a thing overseas, outside of North America. But here in America, when we had the market crash, it was considered a dark age of gaming, according to history. And that was when in 1985, when Nintendo showed up with the Nintendo Entertainment System. And then they started a competition with Sega. They had the Master System back in the day, combating the Nintendo Entertainment System. And then in the fourth generation of game consoles, there was Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. See, even at that time, now keep in mind, Nintendo didn't really save the video game market in general. They just pulled North America out of the video game crash. They saved North America from the video game crash of 1983, and the crash ended in 85. But even then, video games were still seen as a child's form of entertainment. And that's the thing about Nintendo, is that they've been seen as a family-friendly company. You had the Mario games, you had the Zelda games, Kirby, Pokemon, etc. But then in the 90s, now this was when video games started to mature more, while they started to cater more to the adults. There came some violent games, like one of the most popular first-person shooter games. There was Doom. There was a fighting game called Mortal Kombat, which I've been a fan of since high school. There was strategy games like Night Trap, and that was one of the big games that led to the creation of the Esrb. Now, like I said before, and I think another game called Lethal Forcers. I'll have to watch the gaming historian videos about the ESRB again, when it was created, why it was created. So Sega, and if we all know, back in the day, Sega and Nintendo had a fierce rivalry. They would always poke fun of each other. In Yoshi's Island, Super Mario World 2, there were these porcupine or hedgehog-like enemies that made fun of Sonic. Or there was Donkey Kong Country 2 that had Sonic's shoes and Earthworm Jim's gun next to a trash can that said "No more hoppers." And Sega would do those commercials like Genesis does, what Nintendo don't. It was a fierce competition back then. But another thing that made the rivalry bigger is their ideal audience for gamers. Sega wanted to open the door to more adult-oriented games. They wanted to embrace adult gaming. Nintendo, on the other hand, did not. At first, Sega had their own rating system. There was like MA13 or something like that, but that censorship, or not censorship, but that rating board didn't go so well, and that was when the ESRB was created. And, at first, that was when video games started to come under heavy controversy because people back then used to think that video games was a child's form of entertainment, only a child's form of entertainment. And that was to the point where the U.S. government was like, look, we don't want to get into this and have the government regulate video games. But if you don't adapt to some kind of rating board or a protection plan, we will be forced to do so. And that was when the ESRB was created. Now, the ESRB stands for the Entertainment Software Rating Boards. They look at all the content in the game and they try to measure it up, do some simple math, and to see which target audience would be more suitable for said games. Back then there was all these different ratings. Now, if I did my math right, there was, let's see, there's 7 different rating brands from the ESRB. There's RP, which stands for rating pendant. Nowadays, I'm not sure if we still see it nowadays, because they have different ways of warning about the upcoming game and what it intends to be. See, now, back then, rated RP, rating pending, was a way of letting gamers know that said upcoming game has yet to be rated by the ESRB. There's games rated EC, early childhood. Now, those games aren't entirely rare, but they're not very common because they're not the target audience of gamers, because you got all those educational games like Sesame Street. I think Ubisoft had a Rayman education game. I'm not sure if they have. Just let me know in the comments below. I think there was an educational Sonic game, but mostly just educational games. Even Disney used to have them back then, like Winnie the Pooh. And then there was, I think there was a Dora the Explorer. I mean, there was a lot of kid games back then, rated EC, early childhood. And like I said, they're not very common because they're not the target audience for gamers. Those are for kids that are 3 years old, or, at least younger than 5, which, I was 5 years old when I started gaming back in 1998 when Brad brought the Nintendo 64 over to our family's house. But any game that receives an E for everyone rating, E10, everyone 10 and up, T for teens, M for mature, and AO, adults only, those 5 different ratings are the target audience for gamers. Okay. A bit of trivia, though. The E for everyone rating used to stand for KA, kids to adults, which, kids and adults alike can play said game. But then they eventually changed it to E for everyone. I'm not sure when, though, when that happened. Excuse me. But then, any game that receives an E for everyone rating, that's like the equivalent of a G-rated movie, and that everyone can play it. Now, in 2005, the ESRB had introduced the E10 rating, which was like the equivalent to a PG movie, meaning it might be a movie suitable for kids, but there could also be some content that parents must be concerned of, like parental guidance. It's funny, back during the development of games like Shadow the Hedgehog, Sega was originally going to make the game rated T for teens. That was their original goal. But when the ESRB had introduced the E10 rating, that was when Sega was like, okay, we're going to start censoring the game a bit and go for that rating instead. Which, Shadow the Hedgehog's a different story in of itself. I might make that on a separate video later, but, we'll have to wait and see. And then there's the T for teen rating, which is like the equivalent of a PG-13 movie. Now, kids don't have to be accompanied by their parents to buy these games or go see PG-13 movies, but at the same time, it is still strongly recommended that parents accompany their kids when they watch these movies or play these T-rated games. Now, and then there's games that receive M for mature ratings. Now, Those are ratings designed for adult gamers that are 17 years or older. A lot of retail stores like, GameStop, Best Buy, Walmart, and Toys R Us, or at least when Toys R Us and Circuit City were a thing, they used to ask you for IDs. And other retail stores still do. Target, Best Buy, GameStop, Walmart, etc. You have to be at least 17 years old. You have to show them an identification card to buy said M-rated game, and your ID card has to say that you're at least 17 years or older. 18 if you purchase it at Walmart. I'm not sure why, but it is what it is, and I'm just glad, that they're asking for IDs. Because they're trying to help show the public that some of these games are not made for kids. And what's sad is that still to this day, we have some adult human beings, that are stuck in the past, thinking it's the old days where kids are still the number one demographic for games. They still think they're probably all those old pixels that you've seen on the Atari 2600 or the Nintendo Entertainment System. And I think the reason why they still believe that is either they got an ego higher than their IQ, which is my personal opinion. Again, it's just an opinion. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But you have other people who just don't do their research, or they just listen to what Fox News or CNN or whatever news media outlet tells them. And it's just been hard for the gaming community because we're adults now, but we still want to have the right to enjoy playing video games. I'm not saying play them all day, but it's Adult Swim. Let the grown-ups have some fun. But anyways, back in the 90s, when the ESRB was invented, Sega fully embraced it. They allowed mature content on their games. Like Mortal Kombat, when that game hit the scene in the arcades, it took the world by storm. It came under heavy controversy. It had led to the creation of the ESRB. Now, the thing about Mortal Kombat is that when it came to consoles, even though Sega embraced the mature content theme, I believe Sega used to have some kind of parental code. I don't know if it was a password feature to unlock the blood and the fatalities in the game. But when it came to the Super Nintendo version of the original Mortal Kombat, it was censored with sweat and tears or something like that. And the fatalities, like the finishing moves, they were heavily censored also. But I think the Super Nintendo version of Mortal Kombat 2 was left uncensored as well, because Nintendo started to finally embrace the ESRB, though they still had some censorship policies back then. Even though Sega was the one to embrace the adult video game market, they still struggled in the console market, because if you look back on history, Sega never won a console market, and that's pretty sad, because one of my favorite Sega systems was the Dreamcast. It definitely left a big impression on me back when I first played it as a kid, but I guess I could save that for another video. But even though Sega embraced the adult market, they still struggled to win against Nintendo. Like, even though Nintendo had censorship policies at the time for mature rated games, they still had the better systems. Apparently, they still had all those fun games. You had like Mario, Zelda, and you had like Super Metroid at the time, and that left a big impact on the platformer genre community, and that's what inspired Castlevania Symphony of the Night. But of course, for those who don't know, the original PlayStation was originally supposed to be a CD-based add-on for the Super Nintendo. But then Nintendo, and right as soon as Sony were about ready to show off their concept, their peripherals for the Nintendo PlayStation, that was the add-on for Super Nintendo, Nintendo did something shady. They went over to one of Sony's rival companies at the time called Philips. But instead of doing a hardware-based add-on for the Super Nintendo, they just licensed Philips to develop CDI, Mario, and Zelda games, which ended up being lousy. And Sony was quite angry with Nintendo. And when Sony was like, well, we did all this research and development, I guess let's just make a game console. And then that's what led to the creation of the PlayStation, the original Sony PlayStation back in 1995. Now, if I did my history right, if I put the pieces to the puzzle together, I think Sony saw what Sega was doing wrong in the console market, because the PlayStation took the whole world by storm. You know, when you do your history, you know, Nintendo pulled North America out of a market crash, a video game market crash. Nintendo saved the North American video game market. Sony, on the other hand, back in 1995, changed the image of gaming. They changed the mindset of what a gamer used to be. And I vaguely know all this because, you know, my dad, which nowadays my dad's not much of a gamer anymore, but he used to play PlayStation back then. He used to be really interested in the PlayStation brand. At one point he had the original Xbox, but he saw what Sony was doing with the PlayStation. A lot of adult gamers, or maybe adults in general, they saw what Sony was doing with the PlayStation. They made PlayStation more accepted. They made, you know, back then, and I've learned these stories from reviewtechusa, is that back in his time, when you were an adult who wanted to play video games, or a teenager, you were laughed at because we still looked at video games as a child's form of entertainment. That was until PlayStation showed up and changed all that and say, you know, yeah, the PlayStation, that's a really magnificent game console. You got all these somewhat realistic games. You had all these beautiful cutscenes. I mean, even though they were full video motioned, you had the Resident Evil series. You had like Final Fantasy VII. You had Final Fantasies 8 and 9. They left it permanent impressions on PlayStation fans back then. You know, like Castlevania Symphony of the Night, which is my favorite Castlevania game. And then, of course, you had some of the kid-friendly games like Crash Bandicoot, where I started on PlayStation. You had like Spyro the Dragon. You had Jersey Devil. You had Toomba. I think that's how you pronounce it. There was more adventure games like Tomb Raider, and that took the world by storm. And Lara Croft was one of the first female video game protagonists to get worldwide recognition. Why Angelina Jolie played her in the movies. Well, the first two movies, Lara Croft Tomb Raider and Lara Croft Tomb Raider 2, The Cradle of Life. You had Twisted Metal, you had, Parasite Eve. You had all these classics. I mean, now my dad personally, when he got PlayStation, he was in it for all the NASCAR racing games. He was in it for the EA Sport titles. I think he had a hockey game one time. He had a boxing game. He had quite a few NASCAR games. He had, I don't know if he had Madden football, because Dad was more into the NCAA football. He was more into the college football games back then. Like, you know, he had NCAA 2003 and 6 on the original Xbox. But, you know, back then he enjoyed the PlayStation brand. Like I said, he was more into the sport games. But he also took a liking to some of the kid-friendly games like Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon. And he got those games for me and my sister because he knew we'd enjoy them. So, and you know, like I said, back then, the PlayStation had something for everyone. And the PlayStation 2, when that came out in the 6th gen, Sony made it clear. Like, they started boasting, look, gaming is for everyone now. We've got all the games for the adults. We got all these magnificent mindsets and ideas for amazing games to play. And the PlayStation 2, which to this day is my all-time favorite PlayStation system. Not my favorite video game system of all time, but to this day, I just think it's one of the best PlayStation consoles out there, with the PlayStation 1 being a second. You know, and then when Microsoft came out with the Xbox, and when the 360 took the world by storm in the 7th gen, I don't know what Microsoft brought to the table, but they embraced Sony's ideologies. They embraced the mindset of adult gaming. Of course, the PlayStation 3 had a rocky start that generation, but started making a comeback. You know, we still saw Sony we still saw the PlayStation has an adult-oriented system. Whereas Nintendo back then, they had some censorship policies. Even some T-rated games like GoldenEye, I think there was some censorship guidelines GoldenEye followed, and it was censored. Even though GoldenEye, even though Nintendo was seen as a family-friendly company, they were still supportive of mature-rated games like Conker's Bad Fur Day, which is funny. They had some censorship policies for other third-party companies, but they embraced Conker's Bad Fur Day. In fact, according to Did You Know Gaming, E3 2001, Nintendo had 2 separate booths. They had their main booth with all their main games and upcoming titles like the GameCube system and all of its games and Game Boy Advance games. They had a separate booth for Conker's Bad Fur Day where you had to show ID in order to get in. And they had a multiplayer tournament there. And Neil Druckmann, the creator of The Last of Us, he was there. And he won the tournament. He won the game. He won a couple of prizes. And I'll get into him later. I'll explain him later in this video. But, back then we saw Nintendo as a censorship. Even though they were a family-friendly company, there were some mature-rated games they embraced, but most of them, they got censored. If I remember correctly, Nintendo wouldn't allow a lot of sexual content in most of their mature-rated games, though Geist, which was released in 2005 for the GameCube, it had partial nudity in it. There was shower scenes, and then there was, of course, Conker's Bad Fur Day, which had sexual jokes in it, and a sunflower with large breasts. And, and of course, Barry's design, everything. There was, I'm not sure what else was censored, but, Nintendo used to have these censorship policies back then. And then in, the 7th gen, when they came out with the Wii, Nintendo was like, okay, forget the core gamers. You have your PlayStations and your Xboxes, you got your PCs. We're not going to compete that gen. But it's funny, though, even though the Nintendo Wii was seen as a family-friendly game console, but, you had people like Level 1 Games, Gamer Muzz, he believed that the Wii was made for the core gamers. There was the Conduit, there was Mad World, and No More Heroes. And, even Nintendo had some of their core games. You had Sin and Punishment Star Successor, which is a lot of fun. You got Zelda Twilight Princess, Metroid Prime 3, Super Smash Bros. Brawl, and to an extent Mario Galaxy, even though that was more of a family-friendly game. So I'm kind of 50-50 when it comes to the Wii. I know a lot of core gamers believed that the core games were there, but then you had other gamers that saw the Wii as a family-friendly brand, and I know that because my family, we used to get together and play Mario Kart Wii. We would play like Wii Sports. We would play Bomberman Land, of all things. We had Wii Fit. So yeah, back then, Nintendo used to be the company that would censor mature rated content, or maybe not so mature rated. And Sony was the one that embraced it. Of course, Sony had some censorship games like BMXXX, a bicycle racing game that was rated M for mature, and it had some censorship guidelines for the PlayStation 2 version of the game, but yet the GameCube and Xbox versions were left unchecked. But back then, some of Sony's censorship, they weren't as atrocious as they are now. Nowadays, when Sony first moved PlayStation Studios to California in 2016, come 2018, that was when they fully embraced censorship policies. And they looked at all these different games from different regions, and that's when they started censoring them. Like, hey, look, we're not going to allow this on our platform, and we just don't approve of it. Either you can censor it or just go take it somewhere else. And that's when they started censoring it. And then eventually Nintendo, now current president Nintendo, Shuntaro Furukawa, I think I said his last name right, correct me if I'm wrong, but while Nintendo still censors their first-party intellectual properties, they did say that we would allow third-party companies to have creative freedom. We're not going to have any censorship policies for them. Now, I don't know about Xbox. I don't know if they have any. I think back when I had Twitter, they once came out and said that we currently have no plans to adapt to any censorship policies, at least as of yet. Not yet. And I hope they don't. Okay. They would not allow a game called Galgun, which I'm not a fan of Galgun either, but at the same time, I do sympathize with fans of that game, how they wanted to play it on the Xbox, because knowing Sony, they would censor it. The PlayStation version, again, there's no PlayStation version. But it's on PC, it's on Nintendo Switch. If you're interested, you can go check it out. But now, Nintendo, of all things, which we used to look at Nintendo, and now, even to this day, though, at least with some of their first-party intellectual properties, we do look at Nintendo as a family-friendly company. Though when it comes to some of their franchises like Fire Emblem or Metroid, I don't look at those as family-friendly. Because they do, even though they've received like T ratings from the Esrb, they have received some content not suitable for kids. And Metroid Dread, again, it's not the most violent or gory game ever. But, when you fought Kraid, where he shot out spikes from his gut, I could probably see why some kids would be disgusted by that, or why some parents wouldn't approve of that. But again, it's a game rated T for teens, so, parents, if you're watching this video, please be strongly cautioned of Metroid Dread. Of course, Nintendo has some kid-friendly shooter-based games like the Splatoon series, which they're a lot of fun. I've debated on whether or not if they should remaster the first game and bring it to the Switch. Part of me thinks they should, so newcomers can know what they're getting into, like understand the history of the game. I mean, they'll still have like the single player, and they can remaster the multiplayer version. But I don't know if they'll still do those Splatfests. But anyways, and we got a third game coming, but it seems like the tables have turned. Back then, Nintendo, the family-friendly company that used to censor games, which now they still censor their first-party games, which on one hand I disagree with, but on the other hand, it's only fair considering it's their first-party intellectual property. But they allow creative freedom for third-party companies. Now, back then, PlayStation, like I said, was the corporation, was the company to embrace the mature demographic, to embrace adult gaming. And now they have censorship guidelines that third-party devs have to follow. And a lot of gamers, a lot of Japanese devs, and maybe other corporations aren't going to agree with it. And, PlayStation devs, they're starting to leave the PlayStation brand, because PlayStation was the one console that the Japanese embraced. It was one of their greatest systems. I mean, they still had their Nintendos, but, PlayStation, like I said, was the console to embrace adult game. And I'm here to disagree with Sony's censorship policies, mainly because, well, we have parental controls. We have some good parents. We actually have reasonable parents that go to GameStop, or they go to these video game stores and say, hey, is this game suitable for my kid? Can you tell me about it? And that's when the retail store says, okay, this game is rated mature. It has all these mature contents like language, use of drugs, alcohol. It's got violence, sexual content, blood and gore, etc., etc. And there's parents that will say, okay, I don't think my kid's suitable for that. I'm not gonna buy it for them. But now if they have their own place or whatever, and they want to buy it there, if they're living on their own, that'd be a different story. But again, we have good, responsible parents that want to determine what they think is suitable for their kids. And, again, that's why these consoles have parental controls. Okay, now, even though adults are now currently the number one demographic for gamers, there are still some family-friendly games. Like, again, we still have Nintendo. Sega, they still make Sonic the Hedgehog. PlayStation has Ratchet and Clank. We got a new one that just came out for the PlayStation 5. And also Banjo-Kazooie for the Xbox. But that's a different topic for a different video. But anyways, overall disagreement to PlayStation censorship policies is simply due to the fact that we have the ESRB and we have parental controls. I also forgot to mention that the ESRB has a rating called AO, Adults Only. And some of those games received heavy controversy back then. AO, Adult Only games, they're actually rare and kind of hard to find. The most recent one I could remember was Hatred on Steam, which I wasn't a fan of Hatred, which, again, it was their constitutional right to make it. I understand that. I'm not against constitutional rights. I'm all for creative freedom, but I just didn't think that game was creative because it involved a psycho monster killing innocent lives, and that was adding fuel to the fire of all these news media outlets like Fox News thinking that it's going to be proof video games cause violence, even though the game was a work of fiction. Which it ended up being one of the worst games of that generation anyway. So, and again, AO adult only games, you're only going to find them on PC. You're not going to find any of them on consoles. You're not going to find them on Nintendo, PlayStation, or Xbox, or Sega back then. Because when Nintendo, even once the ESRB became a thing, Nintendo just said, hey, we're going to have some censorship policies for mature rated games or maybe some other games. But then they came out and said, we're not going to carry adult only games. Okay, if PC companies want to handle them, we'll let them. But, you know, to this day, Nintendo still has the policy that you're not going to find AO adult only ratings on their consoles. And even though PlayStation was the one to embrace the adult gaming, and to an extent Sega, they too had the policy that we will not allow adult only games on our systems. And same with Xbox Studios, they will not allow adult only games on their consoles. Now, like I said before, this video is going to be about why I disagree with PlayStation censorship policies, my thoughts on what's wrong with PlayStation Studios, and why they're out of touch, why they're pulling some anti-consumer moves, and what they can do to improve. Now, I know this video is going to upset a lot of PlayStation fanboys, and let me just say this now. Just stop, okay? I know what you fanboys do. And again, it's not just PlayStation fanboys. There's Nintendo fanboys, Xbox fanboys, PC fanboys, or fanboys of any kind. Because, you know, they love these corporations so much, they feel the need to white knight them and defend them to the bitter end. You know, they'll wake up one morning and pledge allegiance to said console. Or look, this needs to be said. Okay, look, I get it. You guys like the PlayStation brand. I enjoy PlayStation too. I'm a PlayStation fan. But until they drop their censorship policies, I don't think I'm going to buy a PlayStation 5 anytime soon or get one for, say, Christmas or birthday. Okay, I just currently have no plans to get one. Even if they were to make another portable PlayStation system, which I doubt they will, but hey, wishful thinking, huh? But anyways, you know, PlayStation fanboys, you got to understand something. There's going to be some stupid things that these corporations will do, that PlayStation will do, and they deserve to be called out for it, okay? And if you think I'm a PlayStation hater with what I'm about to say, you can think again. Because, I mean, for crying out loud, I got a PlayStation t-shirt, and I don't know if you can see it, but I got the square, X, triangle, and circle buttons. I found this at Walmart one time, and I was just like, cool, I'll pick it up. I also have 2 more PlayStation shirts in my closet. I got a black PlayStation t-shirt with the PlayStation, with the square, circle, triangle, X buttons on it. I also have a long-sleeved PlayStation shirt, and it's part of these PlayStation pajama pants that I have. I got them for Christmas last year from my sister. Actually, it wasn't last year. It was back in Christmas 2020. I also will give you my history with PlayStation. Like I mentioned before, I first started gaming at the age of 5. I first started with the Nintendo 64, but then Dad came home with the PlayStation. In fact, here's his PlayStation right now. This is a hand-me-down. He gave it to me when he stopped playing PlayStation. Oh. Again, we've had this console for that long. We've had it for so many years. I'm still looking to replace the disc laser for it. It still works, but it still has some trouble reading games. And some of my games are in great condition. Okay. Now, I also have a PlayStation 1 Slim. My cousin Kaylee gave this to me when she stopped playing PlayStation. I also have a PlayStation 2. I've got 2 models. I got the Slim model. I first got that back for my 12th birthday back in 2005. And I remember getting games like Transformers Armada, the video game adaptation, and Sly Cooper 1 and 2. Okay. But as of right now, these PlayStation consoles are decommissioned. Okay, these are consoles that are currently in repairs. They've been in need of a new disc laser replacement. Now, this PlayStation Thick model, I bought it off of a friend back when he worked, back in 2015. We used to work at this grocery store together, which I still work there. I recently got Employee of the Month, but he left a long time ago, and I can understand. He probably wanted a better job. It's clear he wasn't going to stay there forever. And this is the case he sold me too. See, I bought his PlayStation 2 Thick model and a couple of games, including this case, for $45. I also have a PlayStation 3 Slim with 320 gigabytes. I got this as a Christmas present from my dad back in Christmas 2010. And then my mom, she got me a PlayStation 3, or a PlayStation Portable 3000 model. I don't know if it's a Slim or Thick. I haven't kept up with most of those models as of late. And then in 2015, for Christmas, I received my own PlayStation 4. This was technically a Star Wars Battlefront model because it was the only one she could find. But, again, I have a PlayStation 4. I have a PlayStation Vita Slim. This was a Christmas present from my mom back in 2016. Now, I could be wrong, but I think that PlayStation Vita is a Japanese import because she wanted to buy it brand new instead of getting a used one, which I could probably understand because if you get it used, it's more likely not going to work. And these are some of my games. So, yeah, that's currently my PlayStation collection. I've enjoyed the PlayStation brand. I've enjoyed games like God of War, Sly Cooper, back in the PS2, which I didn't get into God of War until high school. Which, see, back when I was growing up in my family's old household, we were very strict on mature rated games. I was allowed to play some mature rated games, like I was allowed to play Halo on the Xbox. My Uncle Chris, he allowed me to play games like Time Splitters 2. And he used to rent Perfect Dark for the Nintendo 64, and he used to love that game. And I would play it with him because it was just like GoldenEye. He let me play Time Splitters. He let me play Brute Force with him. But some other games he wouldn't let me play. But and that's okay. It's understandable. But eventually, whenever he moved out, Mom and Dad became very strict of what mature rated games I could play and what I couldn't play. Eventually, come around like middle school, I used to sneak and play Resident Evil 4, but when they eventually found out, they just continued to let me play. Then there was like high school, and that was when I was started to fully embrace a lot of mature rated games. That was when I was getting back, and because of Snake's inclusion in Super Smash Bros. Brawl, that was when I fully got back into the Metal Gear games. That was when I got Metal Gear Solid: The Twin Snakes on the GameCube, which isn't a bad remake, but I can see why a lot of fans weren't too thrilled about it. Could it have been a better remake? Maybe. Maybe we'll see Blue Point Games do that if, Konami would learn to just get a grip. But I guess I'll save the Konami video for another. Well, maybe the Konami rant. I guess I'll save that for another video, maybe. But anyways, that was when I started embracing the Metal Gear franchise. I started looking more into the Final Fantasy series. Like back when I was in middle school, I got Final Fantasy X, which ended up being one of my all-time favorite Final Fantasy games. I do remember getting a Sega Dreamcast, a used one for Christmas 2009. Like, I got Resident Evil Code Veronica. I started getting more mature rated games back then. And then in Christmas 2010, when I got the PlayStation 3, I already had Metal Gear Solid 4 at the time. I had Castlevania Lords of Shadow. And then when I went to GameStop to use some of my GameStop gift cards, I ended up getting games like Ninja Gaiden Sigma, which at the time I had no idea that the Ninja Gaiden Sigma games were just PlayStation ports of the original Xbox models, or the Xbox versions. But then I also got X-Men Origins Wolverine, the Uncaged edition, which was a pretty good game. I had Resident Evil 5, which I was going to get that for the 360, but where I had just gotten the PlayStation 3 at that time and I wanted to build up my collection, I was like, you know what, I'll just get it for the PS3 instead. Eventually, I traded the original version in exchange for the gold edition because that had all the DLC on the game. I also got Assassin's Creed Brotherhood back then, which was my first steps into the Assassin's Creed series. And then finally I started embracing the God of War series because at that time, my local GameStop, they still had GameCube titles. They still had PlayStation 2 and original Xbox titles used. And I eventually found like God of War, the first game. Eventually I got the second game, but for some weird reason, I skipped the first two games and just went straight to the third. I also remember when I first turned 18, back when I was in high school, I started playing Dante's Inferno. I started opening up to the more mature content games back then. And, and like I said, Sony fanboys, if you really think I hate PlayStation, you can think again. Because I remember I used to love playing Crash Bandicoot. I still play Crash Bandicoot. I still like the Spyro the Dragon games, though I hope that Crash and Spyro can fall back into the hands of better developers, considering what's going on with Bobby and Activision, that turd nozzle. It's just, you got to open your eyes for a second. I can vaguely remember, there was a time when PlayStation fanboys, they used to bully people for playing those kiddie Nintendo games. And now they bully you because you don't embrace Sony's censorship policies. Because back then they used to laugh at you for playing those kiddie Nintendo games. And now they pick on you and bully you because you don't agree with Sony's censorship policies. You want to go back to the days when you could embrace a mature rated game. It's funny, back when I was in high school, there was this Xbox fanboy. I don't really know if he was really an Xbox fan. I think he was just posing as one just to aggravate me. Because, he knew I was a Nintendo guy, and he wasn't too thrilled about Nintendo. It's not that he was a hater. He just was not a fan of the Wii back then or anything, or any other console. He was always just an Xbox guy. It's got them good graphics, and, you need to get an Xbox. That's a man's console. Even though we were just teenagers back then, we were still kids. But, just what happened? It's funny, you used to bully people for, some of you were the type that hated on Nintendo. Y'all hated Nintendo because they were the kiddie-friendly company, and now you're hating on them because they won't adapt to censorship policies. Which, again, some of their first-party intellectual properties still have some censorship, but they won't embrace censorship policies for the third-party companies. And then there was The Last of Us Part 2. And this is where Sony's double standard of censorship really showed. They have censorship policies that third-party brands have to follow, but Sony themselves, they don't have to follow it. Now, look, if you like The Last of Us Part 2, that's fine. I'm not here to knock you for that. Okay, if you like it, by all means, play it, embrace it, whatever. Okay, and if you don't like it, that's also fine. And I kind of don't blame you. See, a friend of mine, he was kind enough to let me borrow the game. I played the game, and I remember the Rat King boss fight. That was pretty cool. I mean, there was some things about The Last of Us Part 2 I liked. I think it had solid gameplay. I thought the music was good. I thought the graphics were passable. At least they were passable. But the story was just abysmal. It was just awful. And I'm just going to say it right now. I don't care what people say. I believe Joel was treated unfairly in that game. He deserved better. And then Abby, I could not feel sorry for her. I tried to like her, and I just couldn't. After which look, I understand Joel killed her dad and all, but look where it got her. It's almost like it's like if they made a Transformers movie or game where you had a heroic Autobot started killing all these Decepticon soldiers, and then they finally meet Megatron, who killed his commander or mentor, say Optimus Prime or another Prime, and then they spare Megatron. It's just ridiculous. I just think Sony failed to deliver, or Neil Druckmann failed to deliver a high quality sequel. He could have wrote a better sequel, and I wanted The Last of Us to have a sequel, which I like the first Last of Us. Still to this day, I think the first Last of Us is a phenomenal game. Maybe it does get too much love and attention, and if you don't like the game, hey, that's fine. I'm not here to be a fanboy or anything. I'm just saying I personally like the game, and if you don't, that's fine. But Last of Us Part 2, again, it's not that I didn't like the game. I just hated the story. I just hated some of the character development that went in. And, I just think Joel deserved better. And I just did not like Abby. I did not want to play as Abby. And there was a lot of Japanese game developers that did not like it. I saw some of these reactions to, Joel getting killed. And there was this one Japanese game developer. And now I could be wrong, but I heard this Japanese gamer, he lost his father, and he's still trying to live with it. He misses him, and when he saw that scene where Joel got killed, he did not like it. In fact, he took the game out of the system and he cut it in half with scissors. You could tell that story was not very good for a video game. And it's like Andrew Clavin, he flat out didn't like it either. It was just woke SJW nonsense. It was a woke SJW mess. And look, I'm not a radical anti-SJW. I just hate their mindset. I just hate that they want to take away some of these beloved franchises and entertainment stuff that we used to enjoy and ruin it. In fact, look at what's going on with Lord of the Rings on Amazon TV series. I recently just got into the Lord of the Rings, which back in the day, I used to have trouble getting into some of the latest things. I always had the tendency to ignore them. But now that I finally watched the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and now that my aunt and uncle, they recently subscribed to HBO Max, I got to watch Lord of the Rings 2 and 3, the extended versions. I didn't get to see the extended version of the first Lord of the Rings yet because I saw it on a different platform. I saw the original version on a different service. I'm going to try and sit down and watch the extended version. I mean, they're kind of long movies, and I just don't know if I can sit that long because I got other things I want to do. But it's like J.R.R. Tolkien said, evil cannot create anything new. It can only corrupt what good people have created and intended. And that's why the new Lord of the Rings TV series is failing. And you got all those SJW crybabies, snowflakes, or whatever it is you want to call them. They're having meltdowns because nobody wants to embrace the new Amazon TV series. You know, and SJWs, they're starting to take over PlayStation. And gamers are getting fed up with it. I miss the days when PlayStation was PlayStation, you know? I miss the days when they actually embraced quality entertainment games. They had one of the greatest JRPGs of all time, Legend of Dragoon. Like, Blue Point, why aren't you remaking that game? You need to find a way to get in touch with some of the former developers of Legend of Dragoon and have them fully embrace a remake. And of course, Sony, please don't censor it. It's not worth it. But hey, we need to go woke. We have new times. We're just, but okay, you know what? Just forget that. I mean, I still want to see a Legend of Dragoon remake because that was a classic JRPG. I didn't get to play it back when I was a kid, but back in Halloween 2019, I was about ready to get Resident Evil Triple Pack and Luigi's Mansion 3, which I only got Luigi's Mansion 3 back then. But a friend of mine, he came into my workplace one day and he sold me a good condition copy of Legend of Dragoon for just $30. And thank you, Josh. Really love that game. So, yeah, Sony, if you're watching this, please remaster the game. Blue Point, please remaster the game. I also would like to see Ico get remastered. And even though it's not PlayStation intellectual property, I want to see that Transformers Armada game from the PlayStation 2 get remastered by Blue Point. And I want the developers of the Medieval remake Medieval 2, you know. And, you know, Sony, you've allowed Insomniac to bring back Ratchet and Clank. We got a new one. What was it called? The Thrift in Time? I think so. You know, you got God of War Ragnarok coming. Now, another thing. Where is Sly Cooper 5? Where's Jack and Daxter? Where is Twisted Metal? Where is what else? Where's Bloodborne 2? You know? Where is gosh, what else do you have? Okay, you know, where's the Resistance series? That was on the PlayStation 3 by Insomniac. I'd love to see that make a comeback. Kind of wishful thinking, but I wish Sony, I wish you guys would bring back Crash and Spyro. I understand Activision is the intellectual property holder of those games, and they're being bought by Microsoft, even though Microsoft is still allowing Activision games to come to PlayStation. Sony, you should embrace a brand new Spyro the Dragon game. Now, we recently got Crash Bandicoot 4, and that's good. But I wouldn't mind seeing a Crash Bash remake, but only as a small, low-budget game for just $20. And if you want to add some new additional content to it, that's fine. But let's say if there's going to be a Crash Bandicoot 5, like a follow-up to 4, It's About Time, I guess you could allow Crash Bandicoot, or the Crash Bash remake, to be part of Crash Bandicoot 5's multiplayer portion. That's just my opinion, but I'd love to see that come back. Again, look at what you did to Gran Turismo. I miss the days when you had to put Gran Turismo 1 in the PlayStation disc, in the PlayStation console, and that was it. You had a complete racing game back then. But now you got a 7th game that requires an internet connection, cannot be played offline at all. It's got microtransactions. It's just a mess. And the thing with online-only games, once the servers go out, that physical copy you buy, you won't be able to play it anymore. Like, Sony, you should re-release Gran Turismo 7 with some offline portions, some offline modes, okay? I know I might be asking for too much, but you gotta go back to the old days, man. But then again, that's going to be a different topic for a different video, because I think after this video, I'm going to make another video about why I still support physical media and what the gaming industry can improve. So, but anyways, Sony, why are you doing these censorship? You don't need these censorship policies. We have the ESRB. We have parental controls.
And don't say they're not helping, because they are helping. You just won't pay attention to them. You just won't embrace them like you should. Now, again, at first it was only those anime games or Japanese that you started censoring because, and this is going to be a pretty controversial topic. This probably will affect my video, but we need to discuss it anyway. We have some people, we have some woke SJWs that are coming out and speaking out against anime. Because we have this misguided notion that anime promotes pedophilia. Do I believe anime promotes pedophilia? Not really. I've watched anime when I was a kid, and I turned out fine. You know, this is almost like the whole Tom and Jerry causes violence controversy, and look at how that turned out. What was the number one reason why we couldn't blame Tom and Jerry for violence? Because it was a cartoon. Cartoon characters don't get hurt. Same with these anime-based games. And another thing is, too, like, I oppose Sony censorship policies because, you know, I wasn't all a big fan of the Senran Kagura games, but I remember picking up Senran Kagura 2 for the 3DS, and I started having fun with it, and I enjoy the hack and slash genre. But, you know, Sony, you're having censorship policies that are requiring these games to be removed. Because if I remember correctly, the PlayStation 3 struggled back in the 7th gen. And you started embracing some of those niche titles, like Hyperdimension Neptunia, which I have yet to play. And now you turned your back on these Japanese devs. They saved the PlayStation 3. Back then. I mean, granted, the PS3 didn't beat the 360 in the console wars that generation. But, you know, the PlayStation 3 still made a comeback. And now you're forcing these Japanese devs to censor their games? It's just unreal. Now, and I know some people are going to say, well, dude, those Senran Kagura girls, they're underage. We have to have those censorship policies. Really? Because, again, last time I checked, we have the ESRB for that reason. Okay? If you don't know how the ESRB works, let me remind you. They're not going to embrace a game. They're not going to greenlight a game for localization if it promotes pedophilia. They won't. And they take it very seriously. Though it does make me question how they looked at the Guide game, and believe it or not, that's an actual game. It was released back in 2004. It was developed by Top Heavy Studios, founded by Jeff Spankenberg. You know, for those who don't know, Jeff was one of the founders of Iguana Entertainment that helped with the Turok games, and then he formed Retro Studios, and that's when they co-developed the Metroid Prime games for Nintendo. And he was known for, I guess, slack-off behavior at work. And he had a website called Sinful Summer that involved pictures of him with scantily clad women at pool parties, linked to Retro Studios. And it ran off of Retro Studios' webpage, or something like that. And he got fired for it. And then he founds Top Heavy Studios, and he forms a trivia game called the Guy Game. And it's already a stupid idea, because in this game, all these women in bikinis, they have to answer all these questions, and if they fail to answer the question, they expose their breasts. Which I haven't seen the game. I don't plan on. Now, and I'll explain why. Because, and I got to give a shout out to Liam Triforce. And congratulations on your Metroid Prime retrospective video, dude. I really enjoyed it. I've also enjoyed your Zelda retrospects and your GameCube retrospects. I enjoy that one the most. But thanks to you, you kind of reminded me of of Jeff Spankenberg and the fact that he founded the Guy Game. And believe it or not, the Guy Game had an actress in the game. She was 17 years old at the time they were filming this game. And she had no idea what they were doing. And because of that, Jeff had to face all these lawsuits, and the ESRB, and even not even the ESRB knew she was underage. And I'm willing to bet that if they had found out she was, they probably would have had the game canceled before it even came out. So, I mean, look, after learning about the Pro Jared incident, like, we accused him of being a pedophile, a child predator, and then he came and proved us wrong. Okay, now again, he could have handled the situation better, but he was not a predator, and we were all wrong. Okay, so the thing about it is, if Jeff truly did not know that that woman was 17 at the time, like if he didn't think to ask for her ID, okay, then maybe I can see a lighter sentence. Maybe I'll forgive him. But if he truly knew he was 17 and just didn't care, then you deserve to go to jail for a while, dude, because that was pretty pathetic. It truly was. Now, like I said, do I believe the Senran Kagura girls promote pedophilia? No. Because, again, that's why we have the ESRB. If I remember correctly, there was a game called Snatcher on the Sega CD. It's also on other platforms, but you can get the Sega CD version. But only the Sega CD version came to the States. Now, the game, and there's more about this game by Censored Gaming. I'm going to have a link to that video in the description below. Snatcher had a character named Katrina. In the Japanese version of the game, she was 14 years old because Japan has different consistent laws than that of America. Like, in America, we consider 18 to be legal, whereas in Japan, it's, I think, 13. In some areas, it's 17, but in most areas, it's 13. Which, I strongly disagree with, and I really hope that Japan increases their consistent ages up to 18. But anyways, Katrina, she was 14 years old in the Japanese version of the game. Now, because she was because of that shower scene in the game, they had to change her age to 18 when they localized the game. So that's the thing. I'm pretty sure they had to change the ages to the Senran Kagura girls in Senran Kagura. Because there are games that, if the ESRB finds out that said character is underage, which then again, why they didn't think to ask Jeff about the Guy game, which they should have investigated, that is beyond me. But, they did it. The ESRB said that Snatcher, Katrina had to be changed to 18. Okay? And that's why they did that with Senran Kagura. So, again, that's why Sony censorship policies are pointless, okay? If you want to make a fan service game like, Dead or Alive Extreme, like, Senran Kagura, just make sure the characters are of consistent age. Make sure they are adults. But, you got to think about something. For years, we have people coming out saying, oh, video games cause violence, video games are all violent, they're desensitizing kids, they're making kids violent. But guess what? We have had countless and countless studies that show video games do not lead to violent behavior. And I believe those studies because, again, I've played violent video games when I was a kid. I played like GoldenEye. Not the goriest or the most violent game ever, but it definitely wasn't kid-friendly. I remember playing Metroid Prime, which were T-rated games back then. I didn't get to play Prime 2 until later on in my life, but that's a different topic for a different video. I used to play Halo. I used to play Time Splitters. There were times I used to sneak and play Grand Theft Auto at school or at a friend's house. And again, I turned out fine. Now, again, do I think these fan service based games or all these fan service characters, do I think that they're going to desensitize kids into being predators? No, because again, we also had a study concluding that video games did not lead to misogynistic behavior. And I'll have a link to that video in the description below. But the thing about it is, look at what's going on with Elmer Fudd. He can't use his shotgun anymore. He has to have a scythe because, oh, that's a kid's show, that's too violent, even though it's a cartoon. He used to get away with his shotgun back then because he was a cartoon. He never desensitized kids into being violent. I used to watch Elmer Fudd when I was a kid, and he never made me want to pick up a shotgun and go shoot up rabbits and ducks. And again, I know people like to hunt rabbits and ducks, for food, and that's fine. But Elmer Fudd was a cartoon character. He never normalized that kind of behavior. That was all just comedy skits in the Looney Tunes. And now Pepe Le Pew, the French skunk from the Looney Tunes, we had to cancel him. And I know some people are going to say, oh, that wasn't really cancel culture. It was just censorship. Oh, they're just going through a different approach. It's because, it's a kid show and we don't need people like him. It don't matter. Cancel culture or not, it's still a stupid idea. Because again, I watched Pepe Le Pew. He never made me want to go and over-flirt with women. And did I believe he was a sexual predator to Penelope Pussycat? No. Because the real reason why she didn't like him is because he was a skunk. He stunk to high heavens. I'm willing to bet that if he was a cat, then she'd be falling madly in love with him. But again, he was a skunk. That's why she didn't like him. And then there came that special where Pepe Le Pew mixed all this perfume and cologne together. He sprayed himself with it and he started smelling good. And once he started smelling good, Penelope was all over him. And then he was like, no, madam, please control yourself. And he runs away. So the roles are reversed. Pepe Le Pew wants to escape Penelope, and Penelope wants to date him. So again, what makes you think anime is going to lead to bad behavior, especially when Denmark had a study concluding that anime did not encourage those bad behaviors? And you got to think about something. A lot of these people that are coming out and saying anime promotes pedophilia, some of these people have actually revealed themselves to be actual predators. Back when I had Twitter, and I was banned for being a Trump supporter, which, I don't care. I'll admit it. And Twitter, Twitter can just kiss my big toe. I've seen some of these Twitter users come out and say, oh, anime promotes pedophilia, anime is sexualizing kids, and it's atrocious. But yet, it turns out that the actual predators are the people who attack anime. Like, for example, and I saw this back when I had Twitter. See, Twitter user A draws an anime character in a lewd format, like Usagi from Sailor Moon. Twitter user B accuses Twitter user A of being a closet pedo. And then once people started doing some research and investigation, they found out that Twitter user B was an actual child predator. Like, you get what I'm saying? Twitter is full of these child predators. Even Jack, the founder of Twitter himself, is a predator. We've heard he's had ties to Jeffrey Epstein. Same with Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook. Twitter will ban anime fans for supposedly being child predators, but yet they'll let actual predators roam on Twitter. And there was this one Twitter user who viciously attacked the anime community. He kept saying anime promoted pedophilia. Anime is for closet pedos. And then they found out he was an actual child predator. And if I can link his page, actually, I'm not going to give him a shout out because he's that atrocious. But I can link you to an article in the description below. You get what I'm saying? What I'm trying to say is I find it hard to believe anime promotes pedophilia when the real pedophiles are the ones attacking it. Look at Netflix. Netflix has guidelines that anime has to follow, just to ease up on the, you know what I'm saying? Anime has censorship policies for Netflix has censorship policies that anime has to follow. And yet Netflix allows a softcore child pornographic movie called Cuties. I haven't seen the movie, and I want to give a shout out to YouTube users Penguin Zero and especially ShoeOnHead, because she saw the movie and she knew, and she did it so we wouldn't have to. And I gotta thank you for that. Because of your review, I know not to see the movie. I don't want, and that movie needs to be banned. Okay? I don't know about Hulu. I don't know if they have censorship policies for anime, but they do allow drag queen shows for kids. And speaking of drag queen shows, look at what the LGBTQ community is doing right now with our kids. They're trying to educate our kids into adult behavior, into sexual behavior. Okay? And look, I don't care how pro LGBTQ you are. You need to leave the kids out of it. Stop teaching kids sexual behavior. Let them be kids, for crying out loud. It's not that hard. And Disney's doing it too. They're trying to push LGBTQ propaganda on our kids. It's so funny. These people want to stop pedophilia and predators, but yet we allow the LGBTQ community to indoctrinate our kids. And I know some people are going to say, "Oh, dude, don't be so homophobic. They're LGBTQ. It's just part of their nature." It don't make a difference. Just because you're gay, lesbian, transgender, etc., it doesn't give you an excuse for bad behavior. I know gays personally, and they're coming out and saying, yes, stop teaching kids sexual behavior. Let them be kids. Leave them alone, for crying out loud. They got their whole lives ahead of them. Let them enjoy being a kid. And again, look at the United Nations. They once proposed a ban on anime because we were told it promoted pedophilia. And yet we found out actual predators are in charge of the United Nations. And Sony. Yep, I bet y'all been waiting for this one. PlayStation Studio, and like I said, Sony and PlayStation Studios, they first started these censorship policies for anime to follow. And at first they said, we're going to censor these anime games because we're trying to think of the children, we want to stop pedophilia. And guess what happened? There was a YouTube vigilante group called People vs. Preds. Which, congratulations, guys. I want to say I'm proud of you guys for catching these predators and bringing them to justice. Now, with all due respect, you could have a better approach because, reviewtechusa, he's got a point. Because one of these days, you could get hurt doing all this stuff. Again, I want to see these predators brought to justice. Because, but again, you got to start thinking of different approaches. But other than that, I applaud you guys. I thank you guys so much. Well, anyways, back in December 2021, there was a senior vice president of Sony PlayStation Studios, George Kakiopo. I can't pronounce his last name. I'm sorry, but I don't care. He's a creep. He don't deserve to be shout out. But this George guy, he was a senior vice president of PlayStation Studios. He got caught trying to meet up with an underage child and do horrible, nasty things to them. And, I got to thank you, People versus Preds. And again, it just further exposes the hypocrisy of all these anti-anime people. Anime promotes pedophilia, but yet it turns out that the people who attack anime are actual predators. Sony develops censorship policies that anime shows have to follow, or anime games have to follow, and yet it turns out one of the members was an actual pedophile. And get what I'm trying to say? Oh, and let's look at Evo. One of the former members of Evo, he had these censorship guidelines that fan service based games had to follow. We can't have beautiful, attractive characters. We can't have fan service. And yet, it turns out he was an actual predator, and he admitted it too. I'll even have a link to that video below in the description. You get what I'm trying to say, guys? Because I honestly find it hard to believe that fan service based games and anime based games, or anime in general, will encourage this kind of bad behavior when the real predators are the ones attacking fan service and anime. And it's almost like with the Vic Mignogna case. And if I haven't made it clear, I stand with Vic Mignogna. All these people that are coming out and accusing him of predatorial behaviors, they won't come out and testify. We have a long list of people who have accused Vic Mignogna of sexual misconduct, but they won't come out and testify. They won't show some proof, evidence. Okay? Now, again, I think people should come forward with these accusations, but we got to remember the rule of law: innocent until proven guilty. And I know people aren't going to like what I have to say, but I'm just trying to keep it real with you. If Vic Mignogna was truly guilty, if the facts were there on the table, I would jump to the kick Vic side because, he's guilty. But as of right now, we don't have the proof. We don't have the evidence. And to make matters worse, some of these kick Vic people have revealed themselves to be creeps too. In fact, not too recently, one of the actors at Funimation, Damon Miles, he's an actual predator, and he admitted it too. And I even have a photo of it on my Minds page, and I'll try to send you a link to that video, to that page below. Or then again, if you've got Twitter, get on his Twitter page. You got Twitter users showing the proof that he's a predator. Unless he's blocked these people, unless he's removed these tweets, get on there right now and you'll find out that he admitted it. But, we can't kick him for some reason. Why is that? Why does he get a free pass? But yet we have to kick Vic Mignogna despite the fact that we don't have proof or evidence that he's a predator, a creep. Even people like Ruben Langdon, he's came out and said that, he knows Vic personally, and he doesn't think Vic would go that far. And he knows that Vic, Vic just likes to hug people. And if they don't want to hug, Vic won't hug them. That's all. And I don't think a hug would go as far as sexual misconduct. It's not. He's just a friendly guy. And he knows not to, he's not a perfect guy by any means, but, he would never go that far as being a predator. People like Monica and Chris Sabat, Sean Schimmel, and DC Douglas, which, DC Douglas I don't particularly like, because, look what he did. He filmed himself in a women's bathroom. Even if it were a men's bathroom, that was illegal. That's an invasion of privacy. And yet he got off scot-free. The double standardness is just atrocious. So, and again, that's why I don't agree with Sony's censorship policies. Because we have the ESRB to make sure the right game falls on. And again, if you got a sexual character, they have to be of consistent age, or the game does not get localized. And we have parental controls. Just let's go back to the whole violent video games controversy thing. To this day, we continue to have countless and countless studies that show video games do not lead to real-world violent behavior. Does anyone here remember that lawyer, Jack Thompson? For those who don't know, John Bruce Thompson was a former defense attorney at the Miami, Florida bar, and he used to launch he launched many unsuccessful campaigns against the video game industry, against radio shows, TV shows, and music groups. Excuse me. He once graduated law school from Cleveland, Ohio. And that's when he moved to the Florida bar to become a defense attorney there after graduating law school. Back in 1999, I believe it was 99, 2 years after the incident of the Heath High School shooting in Paducah, Kentucky, he tried to launch several lawsuits against not just the video game industries, but against retailers as well for even selling these games. He tried to represent the parents of the victims lost in that school. But they had to drop the suit because they couldn't find proof or evidence that video games were the problem. They tried to blame the movie industry too, and once again he couldn't prove it. And one of his biggest enemies was against Rockstar Games and Take-Two Interactive for games like the Grand Theft Auto series. Though, to be fair, though, in the defense of Jack Thompson, he kind of had some good points when it came to violent video games. But again, he failed to present them as facts. People only agreed with him because they just didn't like video games. And he tried to prevent the release of a Rockstar game called Bully. And that didn't go so well because the judge, when the judge got the opportunity to review the game and play the game, it never made him want to bully people. He knew the game was satire, just like the Grand Theft Auto series in general. Grand Theft Auto video games have always been satire. They were never made to encourage people to be violent and to go kill. But none of that mattered to Jack Thompson because, once again, he continued to abuse his privileges, his rights I don't know about rights, but he had the privilege to be a lawyer after graduating law school, and he abused his privileges. And when the judge deemed Rockstar's Bully could be sold at stores, Jack Thompson started running his mouth and disrespecting the judge, saying, "You don't even know what it is you got to play." And he got a penalty for that. I think he got a penalty. He got in trouble for it, that's for sure. And that started the road to disbarment for Jack Thompson. He tried to prevent the release of Grand Theft Auto 4, and Rockstar Games did the right thing by suing him for it. But because he was violating their constitutional rights. And Jack Thompson claims what they did was stupid. He started running his mouth about Rockstar trying to sue him, and then he tried to countersue them, but then both agreed to drop the lawsuit. He knew he couldn't win. You get what I'm saying? Jack Thompson never won a lawsuit in his career. The only lawsuit he ever did won was against Facebook because they allowed an anti-Jack Thompson page. But the thing about, and again, Jack Thompson might have had some good points back then, but make no mistake, he was a pretty lousy lawyer. He even exploited victims for personal gain. Like, he tried to link video games to the Virginia Tech shooting. He blamed it on Counter-Strike. And he tried to blame Microsoft for it, despite the fact that Microsoft never really developed the game. Microsoft only published it for the Xbox version. But, all these investigators, these researchers, they searched every nook and cranny. They searched high and low, but they could not find any proof or evidence that the shooter of Virginia Tech played Counter-Strike. They just tried to reason with Jack. Look, we don't have proof or evidence, but Jack didn't care about that. He still continued to insist that video games were to blame, and he insulted gamers and other people who just disagreed with them. And he tried to use his Christian faith as an excuse to bully those who didn't agree with him. He tried to use his Christian faith to attack the video game industry. Now, I'm a Christian myself, don't get me wrong. I just don't use my faith as an excuse to attack the video games, to attack people I don't agree with. And we have Christians working in the video game industry. We got a lot of developers. I'm not saying they're Christian, but a lot of video game developers have gotten elements and inspiration from Christianity for some of their games. I mean, go look up the Christian elements and inspirations for the Legend of Zelda series. Look at the Nintendo GameCube. That the name Nintendo translates to leave luck to heaven. Revelations 21 verse 16 describes the city of heaven as a cube. Now again, I'm not saying Nintendo's a Christian company, but they do get their ideas from the Bible. Who's to say that that verse didn't inspire the cube? For all we know, it could have. But, again, Jack Thompson tried to exploit victims for personal gain. And another incident was a boy named Cody Posey. Now, if you want to know more about the information, just Google search it. Cody grew up in a bad household. He was abused and tormented by his biological father, his stepmother, and stepsister. And he got mad at one point because they burnt him with an iron bar. He got mad and he shot and killed them. And he tried to reason with law enforcement. He said that he was being abused by his family, and they brought this one guy and he witnessed Cody get abused. Now again, there's more information about the Cody Posey incident, and just look it up. But again, Jack Thompson, he didn't care about the fact that Cody was abused. He just used Cody as a stepping stone for his lawsuit against Grand Theft Auto, against Rockstar Games. Because he claimed the PlayStation 2 and a copy of Vice City was found on Cody's home. And he tried to launch a suit against Rockstar Games, but again, they had to drop it because they couldn't find any link between real-world violence and video game violence. But then, that's kind of what started, and that's what got him disbarred. That's why he lost his law license, and why he can't resume practice law. He exploited victims for personal gain. Like, you had all these people, they tried to attack the video game industry. And they end up failing to do so. You see what I mean? And another thing about Jack Thompson, he used to attack Sony. He used to attack the PlayStation brand. He said PlayStation was Attack on Pearl Harbor the second, the sequel. So I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong when I say this, but I'm starting to suspect a pinch of xenophobia in the guy. Which, whether if you like PlayStation or not, that was stupid. That was just uncalled for. Calling PlayStation Attack on Pearl Harbor, that's ridiculous. It's just flat out ridiculous. And again, look what happened to Jack. He lost his law license. So, again, Sony, I remember how you used to combat against Jack Thompson, how you used to prove him wrong that video games did not lead to violent behavior. And now you're finally embracing some censorship policies for not just these anime games, but the recent game, Martha is Dead? Are you finally catering to Jack Thompson? Are you going to tell us that Jack Thompson was right? It's just unreal. So, anyways, this is why I don't agree with Sony's censorship policies. Because again, we have the Esrb, to find all the content in the game and deem which audience it's appropriate for. We have parental controls for that reason, and we have good parents that actually care about their kids and about the content they consume. You also have, like I said, gosh, did I leave anything out? Oh yeah, and again, we've had these countless studies that shows video games do not lead to real world violence. They do not encourage bad behavior. So again, your censorship policies are meaningless, Sony. Okay? And I know PlayStation fanboys aren't going to like what I have to say. And I know some of these woke SJWs, I know you guys aren't going to like what I have to say. But I'm just trying to keep it real with you. If there was factual evidence, undeniable proof that video games led to violent behavior, or if anime led to bad behavior, I'd stop playing video games. I would stop watching anime. But again, we don't have proof. We don't have the evidence. We continue to have countless studies that shows video games do not encourage bad behavior. And as of right now, Denmark has a study concluding that anime does not encourage bad behavior. Anime drawings do not have negative effects. And, again, I'm going to try and conclude the video with this. I've been hesitant to do a video like this. And I know I've been going for over an hour and 41 minutes long, but there was just so much to say. Sony, you're out of touch with the gaming industry. You have censorship policies, which contradicts your old idea, your old vision for the PlayStation brand. You wanted the PlayStation brand to be the console, to embrace the adult gamers, to embrace the adult ideology. And now you want to go back to the past thinking it's the old days where kids are still the number one demographic for gamers? Are you finally going to let Jack Thompson push you around like he tried to back then? Are these censorship policies really worth it? And aside from your censorship policies, what about your old games? Like I mentioned, Legend of Dragoon. Where's Medieval 3? I'd like to see the developers of the Medieval remake. At first, I want to see a Medieval 2 remake, but I also want to see a Medieval 3 come out right after the Medieval 2 remake. And aside from remakes, I want to see some old games come back. I want to see Twisted Metal come back. I want to see a Bloodborne 2. I want to see the Resistance series come back. Maybe a new Infamous. I know Sucker Punch has been busy lately with Ghost of Tsushima. Looking at my PlayStation collection here. I'd like to see a new Killzone game come out. I'd like to see Sly Cooper make a return. I'd like to see older games like Cool Borders, another Cool Borders game. It's funny, I'm not one to play the sports or the snowboarding games, but I used to enjoy Cool Borders back when Dad used to play it. Make Gran Turismo 7 better. Make that one give us an offline option with offline single player modes to it. And again, I'm going to try and say that for a different video. But again, where is Sly Cooper 5? Where is Jak and Daxter? Where's Toomba? Okay? How about try and get in touch with Team Ico, the developers of those games, and have them make a prequel or an origin story based off Shadow of the Colossus. I'd like to see that. I really admired Shadow of the Colossus, and I thought it was a phenomenal game. Excuse me. Try and bring back Crash and Spyro. I know Crash is already making a comeback, but try to help bring back Spyro the Dragon. Okay, and again, I know it's a third-party intellectual property, but, still it wouldn't hurt to try. What else did PlayStation have back then? Okay, and again, bring back Legend of Dragoon. Bring back some more role-playing games and JRPGs. Try to bring back other old games like Jersey Devil, like a remake of that. Remake older games like Croc, which I never got to play Croc, but I've seen the fun in those games. They should come back. Bring back some of your old intellectual properties. Collaborate with Bluepoint and Konami on a Metal Gear Solid remake, a proper remake. Okay, and again, not against the Twin Snakes. That was a good game, but at the same time, it could have been a better remake. Collaborate with Hasbro Gaming and Bluepoint Games to remake that old Transformers Armada game from 2004. That was a classic. That was an underrated gem. It did not get the attention it deserved. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not a masterpiece by any means, but it was actually pretty good. It was a really good shooter. And again, you had Bluepoint remake Shadow of the Colossus, remake Icon X. Now, again, at the same time, I want you to ease up on the remakes. I want you to come out with some new intellectual properties that will appeal to the gaming crowd. Make PlayStation again. Bring back the old PlayStation games. How about you fully embrace backwards compatibility for the PlayStation 5? You got some PS4 games that are backwards compatible, but at the same time, embrace the whole library of PlayStation 4 games. And then while you're at it, embrace PlayStation 3 backwards compatibility. Embrace PlayStation 2 backwards compatibility. And maybe PlayStation 1 if you can. Okay? And once you fully embrace the backwards compatibility, and again, try to bring some of those old PS1, 2, and 3 games on the PlayStation Network store, because back then, some of those old PlayStation 1 games, to this day, they're kind of hard to find, and they're going for a pretty penny on, like, eBay and Amazon. But again, and if you do bring back old PlayStation 1 and 2 games, bring back that memory card adapter you had for the PS3, and we can save our PlayStation 1 and 2 data on it again. You almost shut down the PlayStation shop store for PlayStation 3 and Vita, and yet people still play those. Try to keep them up for as long as you can. But if you're going to shut those stores and servers down, you need to find a way to bring back those old games. Fully embrace the backwards compatibility for PlayStation 3, 2, and 1. Now, here's the thing. I'm not anti-backwards compatibility. I'm all for it, okay? I can see why it's important, because you got some people that sell their old systems but want to keep the games so they can play it on their new ones, okay? Granted, I can still repair these old consoles. Now, like I said before, I'm in the process of repairing my PlayStation 2 slim and thick models. I finally got the proper tools. I finally got the replacement parts needed, like the disc lasers. Now, the problem with the disc lasers is that there's a spot on there that needs to be desoldered on both lasers. Okay, and I think the PS1, I think it's this laser. If I were to get a new one for it, I think it might have a desoldering spot too. And my PlayStation 3, its disc drive, I can definitely hear some problems with it too. I don't know if I should replace the disc drive as a whole or just replace the lasers. Again, I'm not sure, but I'm still going to try and take care of her. But when it comes to backwards compatibility, I try to use it as a last resort, a very last resort. Because back in late 2016, I think, my Nintendo Wii stopped working on me. It stopped reading games because I was trying to play Super Mario Galaxy one time with Luigi, and it started locking up on me. It wouldn't read my games. And because I didn't have the proper tools or the knowledge to fix it at the time, I had no choice but to transfer all my saved data on the Wii U. Of course, nowadays I have finally fixed my Nintendo Wii, and I can finally, and I also soft modded it too to add to bypass the region locking.
Now I can play Fatal Frame 4 and then and Another Code R, which I didn't get to play the first Another Code on the DS, which we call it Trace Memory here in the States. But again, I just found a copy of it on Amazon, which I've stopped ordering from Amazon. I'm now going to eBay. And now I'm going to try and import games like Disaster Day of Crisis and maybe the Fatal Frame 2 remake if I can. But I'm going to try and save. But I'm going to try and save all that for a different video, like a Nintendo Wii collection video. But now on my Wii U, that's where I start playing most of my Nintendo Wii games. Okay, sometimes if I feel nostalgic about it, I'll play some of my Wii games on the Nintendo Wii, which I could probably just still use my Nintendo Wii for streaming one day. But now all my Nintendo Wii games are going to be played on the Wii U. So, but like I said, you need to start fully embracing the backwards compatibility, Sony. You need to start listening to your consumers again. You need to start listening to the old PlayStation fans back then. Bring back PlayStation. Let PlayStation be PlayStation again. Because now you got, instead of PlayStation, it's now Censorship Woke Station. Censorship Woke SJW Station. And you got to go back to the old days, man. Look, I'm not saying go back to the past where kids used to be the number one demographic for games. What I'm trying to say is bring PlayStation back to a golden age when we can have better, high-quality games. When you embrace the third-party games like Final Fantasy, Resident Evil, Metal Gear Solid, and you allowed creative freedom. You allowed more creative freedom back then. You know, Square's already working on Final Fantasy 16 and a new Star Ocean for the PlayStation. I'd like to see them bring back games like Grandia. I'd like to see a new Mana game. But I want you to start fully embracing creative freedom. Drop your censorship policies because you don't need them. We have the ESRB for that reason. We have parental controls for that reason. And I don't know if it has something to do with Jim Ryan's leadership, or whoever the current CEO of PlayStation is. But we need some new leadership. We need some young blood in there. We need someone who's very passionate about PlayStation, someone who embraced the PlayStation mindset, someone who's been a fan of PlayStation for years, and bring PlayStation back to its glory days. And that's all I ask of you, Sony. You drop your censorship policies, you start embracing creative freedom, and definitely start embracing some backwards compatibility, which again, I'm not anti-backwards compatibility. I'm all for it. It's just personally for me, I only use it as a last resort. But at the same time, I can understand why some people would need it. I mean, here are two very important things you need to do, Sony. If you want me to get a PlayStation 5, I don't care if I have to save up and buy one, or if I can get one for, say, Christmas. Here's what you need to do, Sony. One, you need to drop your censorship policies and start embracing creative freedom. Okay? Let the third-party developer decide if they want to censor it themselves, and if they don't. But overall, just let the ESRB do their job. Let parental controls be, and start advertising the parental controls. All right? So again, drop your censorship policies and start embracing more creative freedom for the PlayStation 5, for PlayStation games in general. And then you'll start getting more respect from the gaming industry and the community as a whole. You really need to start thinking about this, all right? And that's all I have to say. I know this is going to be kind of a controversial topic because of what's been happening at PlayStation Studios and about, the censorship policies. But again, I had to get this off my chest. And I have to explain why I disagree with Sony censorship. So, now that my Sony censorship video has been done, I think
my next video, I'm going to talk about the importance of physical media again, why gamers deserve better. You know, I'm going to do a topic video about that. And I still plan on doing a Nintendo GameCube collection video. It's just the problem is where I've been focusing on other things. Like if I haven't mentioned before, I'm looking to become an author. I'm looking to write a book. I'm in the process of I won't say Nintendo fanfic, but a Nintendo inspired teen drama series on my Grammarly account. I also have a Wattpad account if you want to follow that. So again, try to keep a lookout. If you enjoy my content, feel free to subscribe and look for more information. And like I said, I'm going to try and do another video about the importance of physical media. I'm going to try and do more collection videos with, say, my GameCube collection, then my Wii, Wii U, and maybe Nintendo Switch. I'm also thinking about doing a Game Boy / Game Boy Advance collection because I plan on picking up some Game Boy Advance games here in the next few days and weeks. But, well, scratch that, maybe in the next few weeks and months because I'm trying to watch my money. But again, if you enjoy my content, feel free to subscribe. And if you want to see more, I will thank you for your support. But until then, this is Optimus N64 signing out. Stay gold, my friends.